In 1965, something happened on set that made everyone in the group cry. It wasn't an accident or a death. It was a sound, a silly, childish noise that ruined many takes of the most important scene in the movie. It cost the company a lot of money to try to fix it. They couldn't, so they put something over it. No one could talk about what really happened in that gazebo for 30 years. Even Christopher Plummer, who didn't like the movie, kept the secret. In 1956, two pictures were made based on Maria von Trapp's autobiography. In West Germany, they were huge hits. In fact, they were the most popular films made after World War II, and they were shown all over Europe and even in South America. In the US, however, companies laughed them off as high school projects. Then something strange took place. Paramount sent Vincent J. Dunhue, a director who won a Tony Award, to look at possible projects. He also thought the films were bad when he saw them. But something about the story really moved him. He didn't pitch it as a movie, so he said something brave. "This can't be turned into a movie. For Mary Martin, you need to turn it into a Broadway show." Everything changed because of that thought. Years ago, Maria von Trapp sold the rights to make the movie for only $10,000. That's equal to about $104,000 today. It wasn't a big deal at the time. Hollywood tried to buy the title alone, but Maria said no. That person had to tell the whole story if they were going to tell her story. In the late 1950s, Mary Martin and her husband, Richard Halliday, tried to find Maria to talk about the stage rights, but couldn't reach her. She went to Papua New Guinea with Father Wasner to do religious work. Every time they got to a new mission station, a couple from America had sent them a letter. Maria tore them up. She had no desire to go to Broadway. She wanted to help other people. Then fate took over. Maria and Wasner got back to the U.S. by ship and arrived in San Francisco. There was Richard Halliday waiting. He gave them tickets to see Annie Get Your Gun with Mary Martin. Maria thought the show was great, but she had to tell them the bad news. They bought the rights from her already. She told them, "You can still give it your best shot." That shot would soon be known all over the world. There were plans for the show to use real Austrian folk songs, with only a few new songs written by Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein. They refused to write just one song, though, when asked to. The style they used on Broadway wouldn't go with old European songs. They told the producers what they had to do. "We have to write down the whole score, or we'll be out." The producers decided to wait until Flower Drum's song was done. It was worth the wait. Mary Martin and Theodore Backel were in the show when it opened on Broadway on November 16, 1959. Even though it cost $400,000 to make, $232 million was raised in advance ticket sales. The show was put on 1,143 times. During her whole run, Mary Martin only missed one show. In just a few months, in June 1960, there was a bidding war over the film rights. Fox 20th Century won and paid $1,250,000. Today, that's more than $13 million. The company was losing a lot of money at the time because of the failure of Cleopatra. It was very risky, but the deal had an odd clause. In the event that the movie made more than $12.5 million, the writers would get 10% of the money. Howard Lindsay believed it was a joke. What picture was better than that? He was about to find out. Putting Maria von Trapp in the movie version added to the excitement. Julie Andrews was crushed when she didn't get the part of Eliza in My Fair Lady. They went with Audrey Hepburn instead. Andrews was thought to be too plain for films by Hollywood, but director Robert Wise saw something in her. He went to Disney to watch unfinished video of Mary Poppins and then talked to the screenwriter. "Let's be the first ones to sign her." He agreed to work for $225,000, which is about $2.28 million today. There are no fees or box office splits. There is just a flat fee. On the other hand, Mary Martin made more than $8 million from the play. Fox would feel bad about not giving Andrews a share of the money they made in the end. It was nice of her to get back at Mary Poppins. During her Oscar speech, she thanked Mr. Jack Warner, the man who turned her down. It wasn't easy to find a good Captain Von Trapp either. Christopher Plummer told them no more than once. He believed the part was dull and dead. He went so far as to write a letter to the screenwriter asking for changes. There was more passion, better dialogue, and a personal song that showed how he felt about Maria. Wise tried the movie with other stars: Bing Crosby, Sean Connery, and Richard Burton. It didn't feel right. Finally, Wise flew to London and persuaded Plummer to join, but only if he could change the character. Plummer still didn't like the project. It sounded like snot to him. He drank a lot of the shoot. He later said that he was drunk during the scene with the family's last act. The $225,000 pay that Julie Andrews got is now seen as one of Hollywood's biggest mistakes. The movie made more than $286 million around the world, but she never saw a dime after that first check. Fox was in a tough spot. The $15 million movie Cleopatra almost put the company out of business. They had to sell their land and back lot. Everyone was fired, but The Sound of Music would bring them back from the edge. But Julie Andrews, their biggest star, was the one they paid the least. Not everyone made the list. Mia Farrow tried out 3 times for the part of Liesl. She was 20 years old. The director's notes were clear, nice, and soft, but they lacked energy. He also didn't believe she could dance. In a strange twist, Charmian Carr won the part. She was 21 years older than Farrow, but she had what they needed. Farrow's musical career stopped when she was turned down, but Rosemary's Baby opened the door for her. Kurt Russell, Patty Duke, and Terry Garr were some of the other candidates. But Nicholas Hammond, who was only 15, got the part of Friedrich. He would go on to play the first real-life Spider-Man in 1977. It took a long time to choose the other Von Trapp children, and they were really close. Even after many years, they got back together a lot. Phillips and Andrews stayed in touch with them all their lives. I can't think of anything that could ever be better than Gone with the Wind. There were wars, the golden age of Hollywood, and the start of TV, but it stayed at the top of the box office for 27 years. Then music started to play. In November 1966, only 18 months after it came out, it did something that no one could have imagined. The movie made $286 million at the box office, beating out Gone with the Wind. That number wasn't made up with fake money either. The fact that it was changed to fit the cost of tickets at the time made the achievement even bigger. Not only were people paying more, but a lot of them were also there. Songs and plays had never looked so strong, and it wasn't just for the money. The world saw that movie 283 million times. That's almost 1 in 12 people who were alive at the time. Some people were singing along even though they didn't speak English. People in Asia, Africa, and Europe all fell in love with the same songs and tales. There were no ads running around the world, no social media, and no streams. Just word of mouth and watching it again and again. So that's how it went. The movie turned into more than just a fun time. It spread around the world and caused a culture explosion. It looked like everyone knew the songs, even if they didn't know the words. It felt like they had the same beating. Then the Oscars, where it won 5 times. The film had the best sound, the best cutting, the best score, and the best picture. There were a lot of heavy stories this year, like Dr. Zhivago, but the feel-good musical stole the show. Robert Wise, who had already won for West Side Story, showed that he was the best at what he did. The awards didn't just honor the story, they also honored the way it was put together. All of the technical parts worked together. What stood out were the sounds, the time, the music, and even the cuts. And even though musicals were meant to be fun at the time, The sound of the music made reviewers think it was art. A lot of people didn't see or know about the chaos going on behind one of the most emotional scenes in the movie. When Maria and the captain finally told each other they loved each other in the balcony, everything looked great. A magical kiss, soft lights, and soft talking. In fact, though, the set was very noisy. Sounds that are loud, wet, and silly. The carbon arc lights gave it off. The moonlight image was made with these huge machines. Instead of making a sound like a raspberry, they were supposed to add that dreamy glow to the scene. A long, awkward, and burping raspberry. The lights groaned every time Julie Andrews and Christopher Plummer leaned in to kiss. Not just once or twice, but many times. Time could not have been worse. Some of the most moving lines would be broken up by another rude sound from the lights. He would tell Maria, "I love you," and then the raspberry would come. They tried over and over 20 times, but it didn't work. To keep things together, Julie Andrews said they were standing right next to each other. But every single time the sound went off, they laughed out loud. It went around and around. They laughed more and more as they tried to be serious. He lost a lot of hair, and it never grew back. People who knew him back then would ask him why his hair was so dark. He would have to say that his blonde look from the time of the Nazis cost him a lot. Julie Andrews also had a bad hair day. The people who made the movie thought that the back of her head looked too dark. They sent her for best parts. She got bright orange hair because of something that went wrong. The group freaked out. To hide the mess, they cut her hair even shorter and dyed it blonde. Afterward, Andrews made fun of the fact that her golden blonde hair made her feel more Austrian. But things were a mess at the time. Everyone was shocked. It wasn't nice outside either. Nicholas Hammond, who played Friedrich, said it was the worst spring in 50 years in Salzburg. Almost every day it rained. Huge arc lights were used by the crew to make it look like it was sunny in those happy scenes. It was so bad that kids' growth spurts started to make things less stable. During the long shoot, one character lost all of her baby teeth and had to wear false ones. He went from being 5 feet 3 inches to almost 6 feet tall. In some parts, he had to go barefoot to match the height of his co-stars. It turned out to be a cold and muddy marathon instead of a sunny show. At first glance, The Sound of Music looks like a classic that will warm your heart. But behind the singing kids and rolling hills is one of Hollywood's most deceptive stories. Some people have said that the movie makes Nazis look like cartoon bad guys, which is not good. It doesn't even come close to showing how horrible things were at the time. It was being done to get rid of Jewish people from culture. Conductors like Bruno Walter and Otto Klemperer had to run away. It was illegal to write music by Jewish people. The Nazis even made a separate group for Jewish culture called the Jüdische Kulturbund. In just 5 years, it had 180,000 members. But the movie stays away from all of this. It makes Austria sound romantic, while ignoring the slaughter that was already well underway. Then there's the exciting mountain escape scene. The Von Trapp family walks through the Alps to get to Switzerland, where they are free. There was no such thing as that tense, brave event. The family really did take a train. They walked quietly to the train station, got on, and were on their way to Italy. After that, they went to Switzerland, then France, and finally London. There are no mountaintop chases or hidden trails. In fact, Salzburg is more than 200 miles away from the line with Switzerland. What about the mountains in the movie? In fact, they were very close to Hitler's private hideaway called the Eagle's Nest. The Von Trapp family had Italian IDs because Georg was born in Dalmatia, which is now part of Italy. So they were allowed to leave Austria. The movie version is made up to make it look like there is real danger and success. The story of Maria and Captain Von Trapp's love is just as false. Maria married him for the kids in real life. She herself said it. "I liked him, but not loved him. She only decided to marry him because he asked her to stay and take care of the kids. They got married in 1927, not right before the Nazis came to power as the movie shows. Georg was 47 years old, and Maria was 22. There are 25 years between them. She said she fell in love with him later, but they got married because it was the best thing to do. It became a fairy tale in the movie, telling lies about love and acting like their relationship was full of passion and romance. The children's story was also changed. 10 children were born to the real Von Trappist. There are only 7 in the movie. Agatha Whitehead, Georg's first wife, had 7 children. They are Werner, Hedwig, Johanna, Martina, Agatha, and Maria Franziska. Georg had 3 more children after he married Maria: Rosemary, Eleanor, and Johannes. They not only removed 3 real kids, but they also changed the names, ages, and personalities of the others. As an example, Agatha changed into Liesel, a girl who is sure of herself and flirts with a boy. The real Agathe, though, was shy and grave. Everyone in the family laughed so hard when they saw her on TV. These changes weren't a fluke. They were added to make the story clearer, simpler, and easier to sell. It didn't matter to Hollywood what was true. A lot of lies were told about other people, too. Edelweiss, one of the movie's most moving songs, fooled a lot of people. Many people thought it was a real Austrian folk song. It was even used by President Ronald Reagan at a state dinner in 1984. That being said, it was written in 1959 by American composer Richard Rodgers and lyrics Oscar Hammerstein II for the Broadway show. It was only supposed to sound like a goodbye to Austria. He wrote it as his last song before he died of cancer. Many people now think it's the real national song, which shows how far Hollywood can go with their lies. Austrians in the area weren't fooled. The directors tried to work with the Salzburg Marionette Theater, but they said no. They were asked to make dolls for the scene with the lonely goat herder, but the theater said no, in their own words. This is a very nice move. They shouldn't be in a bad Hollywood movie. There was more to this than just dolls. It had to do with pride. Since 1913, the Marionette Theater had been open. They came up with a unique method that was later recognized by UNESCO. They thought that Hollywood was making their art less important. Interestingly, they later made their own Sound of Music puppet show to take advantage of the movie's effect on tourists. A lot of people in Salzburg were also mad, not because of the singing, but because of the politics. However, it wasn't as easy as the movie made it seem. Austria wasn't really a victim of Nazi aggression. Austria had its own government before the Nazis took over. It was run by an anti-Nazi, but harsh, government from 1934 to 1938. Yes, that government locked up Austrian Nazis, but it also destroyed democracy. All of this wasn't shown in the movie. It boiled down complicated politics to a simple story of good versus evil. People there felt hurt. Friedrich was played by Nicholas Hammond, who later said, "But from the process." The movie was based on her autobiography, The Story of the Trapped Family Singers, which came out in 1949. In the 1950s, Maria sold the rights to German makers, but she didn't know she was giving up full control. The German films did well, but she wasn't included when Hollywood bought the rights. She didn't get paid for the American version, and they didn't ask her what she thought. Not really. She wasn't even asked to the film premiere in 1965. They told her there were no places left when she asked if she could go. What if you couldn't be a part of your own story? It could make hundreds of millions of dollars and change how people saw your life. Julie Andrews looked great on screen, but she wasn't at all calm when she wasn't working. As the music played, she became known for something no one saw coming: being a stickler. They want to get their lines right in more ways than one. Julie was very concerned that the movie wouldn't turn into a fluffy fairy tale. There were 7 cute kids, beautiful mountains, and catchy music, and she was very afraid that it would all get too sweet, fake, and much. She asked Christopher Plummer, the director, and her co-star, "How do we make this real?" over and over. "How do we make the sugar thinner?" Julie didn't act like she was new, even though she had just worked on the hit movie Mary Poppins in 1964. She had strong ideas about things. She wanted Captain Von Trapp and Maria to have a real friendship, not just a cute one. It was important to her that no one in the room laughed. The way scenes were written, filmed, and even how she said her lines were all changed by how careful she was. It wasn't about pride, it had to do with power. And it turned out that her gut was right. Money, on the other hand, was what the studio was fighting while Julie was fighting sugar. It was planned to spend $8.2 million. That was already very high. Soon, though, it started to slip, and then it crashed. Why? Salzburg. The studio didn't know that it rained all the time in that beautiful city. In fact, 1964 was one of the driest years ever. Robert Wise, the director, thought this would take 6 weeks to film in real life. It took 11 in the end. There were more hotel rooms, meals, salaries, and everything else. Over 250 people on the team did nothing for days while they waited for the clouds to clear. The costs kept going up as people got cold and camera gear got wet. Fox had already been slammed with the movie Cleopatra, which almost made them fail. Officials began to freak out. There were whispers in the room. What if this happy family movie did so badly that it brought down the company for good? And that wasn't the only drama going on behind the scenes. The great director William Wyler was meant to be in charge of the sound of music long before Robert Wise was hired. He even quit his job on Fox's board in early 1963 to stay away from a conflict of interest. That's how bad it looked. Not Wyler, though. He had doubts from the start. He did not like the show on stage. He didn't connect with the plot. He was still lost when he got back from his trip to New York to see the Broadway show. He didn't feel right singing those songs. He said they didn't go with the idea. There was also something else. Wyler was having trouble hearing. It made it even harder to run a show. It was easy for his wife to see. He wasn't interested. Wyler started to look for a way out in silence. There had to be a clean break that wouldn't make anyone suspicious. At that point, directors offered him The Collector, a movie based on the book by John Fowles. Wyler read the story and knew right away that it was more his style. It's dark, twisted, and psychological. He begged the Zanuck family who ran the studio to let him out of his Sound of Music deal. The formal story, problems with scheduling. The press was told that. That's what Fox said again. Wyler really did run the other way, though. That made it easy for Robert Wise to come in late 1963 and pick up the pieces.